Hello, gentlemen. It's great to see all of your beautiful faces.
Howdy.
So much facial hair here. I love it. It's almost like we coordinated it. Um, well, my name's Charlie Austin. I'm calling from Harnham. We are the world's leader in the data and analytics recruitment space. Recently, we've been doing a lot of focus in data and AI. I lead our West Coast contract recruitment team. While the market's been a little tough for the greater economy, we've seen a lot of trends picking up in the data and AI space. So today we're going to chat with Carlos Varun. Jose and I are going to be asking some questions about trends in the data and AI space and how to position yourself as a contractor and freelancer in this dynamic market. I'd love if you guys could all give a quick intro about yourself to get going.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. I'm Jose Gomez. I manage our East Coast contracts team based out of New York City. So shout out to all my New Yorkers if you're tuning in. I have over 6 years of experience working in the contract market, specifically in technology recruitment. And it's been a crazy market for the past couple of years. So I'm excited to talk about any market trends, any insights that we're seeing. So looking forward to it.
Hi, my name is Varun. I am a data consultant. I specialize in the marketing and advertising space and have worked at various data engineering companies. I'm currently working as a consultant and have specialized in data governance, data quality, data management, data access, and data processing work across all major cloud providers.
Hi, I'm Carlos, and I'm a data scientist. I've worked in several different industries, like Varun. Marketing analytics has been popping off in these last few years. And I've also done work in the food tech space, in the investment space, quite a diverse array of things. But I've been in data science since 2019 and contracting since 2021. So pleasure to be here and talk with everybody.
Awesome. So the first topic that we're going to get into is how to get into contracting. Like I mentioned, I've been doing contract recruitment for 6 years, and someone who hasn't done contracting, the biggest question that they ask is, how do you get into contracting? So Varun, I want to talk to you about how you got into your contracting career. So how did you fall into that?
Yeah, great question. So my first contract was at Bloomberg through a third-party company similar to Harnham. And the way I got introduced to it was through a recruiter who had mentioned that I can get higher rates on contracts if I was working either as a 1099 or if I had my own company, and higher rates compared to being a full-time employee. So that's W-2 employee at a staffing agency. So I said, okay, let me consider either the 1099 route or the corporation route. And I decided to open up my own corporation. So I have an S corporation. And yeah, the rates are generally tend to be higher because you cover your own Social Security and Medicare tax, so you have to pay for that yourself, and you also have to cover your own insurance coverage, insurance policies, as you know, Jose. So generally it tends to be a little bit more beneficial for your clients to subcontract out to you, considering you're covering all of those costs. But it can also be very beneficial to you as you're also charging a higher rate. So that's essentially how I got into it. And ever since then, I've done over 15 contracts across different clients, and with either in data engineering and DevOps engineering. So that's how I got into it.
Awesome. Real interesting, because you don't really know the difference between a salary versus an hourly rate and how much of an option you can have, whether you want to be a W-2 contractor or you want to have your own LLC. So there's definitely a lot of benefits that come from being a contractor. Carlos, would love to hear about how you got into contracting.
Yeah, I think it just says, like, in a nutshell, it was like the timing was really right. So I had been working as a full-time W-2 previously as an engineer, and then I got into the data science space and was just loving that. But I always knew that I wanted a little bit more flexibility. I wanted to have the benefits of my work accrete more to myself than just to the company that I was working for. So I'm gathering a salary, but a lot more, you're allowed to build a lot more momentum for your own brand as a contractor. And that's that's something that I knew that I wanted. And then the opportunities started to come down the pipe, and I realized that with everything else that was going on in my life, it made sense for me to make this jump. And I tried to de-risk as much as I could, and then take the first contract role from there. Through a recruiter friend that I had. Still have. He's still one of my best friends. But I think because the opportunities arose, and the timing was right, then I took the leap. And it wasn't so much as like a fall into it as I like leapt into it, like, head first, and just wanted to do an experiment to see if it was going to work out for me. So,
and looks like it worked out. So,
so far,
yeah, it's really interesting to hear both of your journeys, how you guys started as contractors. Carlos, why are you continuing as a contractor, and what do you say are like some of the perks for being a contractor?
Yeah, so I want to continue to build on the momentum that I've had in the space, right? So it's been coming on 3 years being a contractor, right? 2 years and change. And I think that the flexibility that it's afforded has really suited the kind of life that I want to build. Like Varun said, the pay rate is higher almost across the board. It's that way, though typically you won't be provided like medical insurance and things like that. And you have to build your own LLC. Like if you want to do it right, there's a lot of extra business type work that you want to do. But I always knew that I had a little bit of an entrepreneurial bone in me, but I also had the skill set that I could use. And so combining those has really worked out. And so it's about continuing that momentum, I think. So I think your other question was the perks of contracting, right? So compensation, tax benefits, like if you do it right, the tax benefits can be absolutely tremendous. And like, who enjoys paying taxes? Come on, like across the aisle, nobody really likes it. So you can go contractor and really help mitigate that problem a little bit. And then I think it also just gives you the flexibility to really chart the course of the technical route that you want to go. So for Varun, data engineering is his wheelhouse, and I'm a data scientist, but I also put on a data engineering hat every once in a while, because oftentimes it's like there's nothing there. You have to build it from the ground up and then do the analysis, right? There's always that progression. It's data engineer, then data scientist, and people have different opinions on this, but I absolutely agree that you need this infrastructure first. I know I'm kind of getting off track a little bit, so let me get back to it. So the perks are many, and I think that the risks are overstated as well. If you do it right, if you play the game right, it can really be beneficial for you.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I hear from professionals in the market is that contract is a pretty big risk. A lot of people think that, if I don't find a contract right afterwards, what I do. And yeah, that's always a concern. But I think that if you build up the right network, you have the right people in your contacts, then there will always be projects that have to be done. So really interesting to hear why you're still in contracting and the perks from your side. Varun, what's making you stay into contracting as well?
Yeah, similar reasons as to what Carlos was saying. So, for example, in the case of AI work or any new data engineering technologies, whether that's Databricks or Snowflake, working with any Google Cloud specific technologies, generally what tends to happen is, companies want to try out a different project or try on a new initiative, and they don't know if it's going to work. So they bring on a contractor to see if they can figure out how to solve a business problem, whether that's in the case of generative AI or generally artificial intelligence. So you get more unique types of work and work that's generally not available for full-time employees, especially considering a full-time employee, once you're stuck with a tech stack, once you're working in a technology stack and you're working in a specific data engineering environment, you're then working on maintaining that technology stack, and you're going to continue building on maybe small features on it, but you're not exploring new technologies. So if I'm working on Google Cloud, I can't decide to work on Azure tomorrow and then decide to work on Amazon Web Services or Databricks, explore generative AI, and then also be able to explore containerization or data science work. Meanwhile, if you have those kinds of skill sets where you are able to translate your skills from one domain to the other, contracting really poses as a benefit for you. So I think that's where it makes sense from a technology perspective. And also touching on what Carlos had mentioned in terms of tax benefits, there's lots of write-offs that you can do, if you have an office space and business expenses, whether you travel to your clients on flights or conferences, and food if you're meeting clients, and of course do it legally, right? but I think if you follow the rules, I think there's plenty of perks that come with it, and those are really the benefits I've seen with continuing to be a contractor. And contracting isn't going to go away for a while. There are risks, of course, but if you like Carlos said, and Jose, like you said, in the case that you build out your network, you're able to really have long list of connections who, when they do need a contractor, they do need work, they'll reach out to you, and you have a guaranteed space to work with them. So yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the professionals I speak with, they love the versatility that you just touched upon. You can go from a 3-month project working on Google Cloud Platform, and then you can work on a year-long project working on Azure. And having that in your resume is super. I mean, who wouldn't want to see a lot of like good, cool projects with modern technology stacks? I guess just to kind of think about the audience that is listening right now, and if they're looking to get into contracting, what advice would you give them, Varun?
Yeah, explore it, try it, see if it's for you. Don't take on contracts unless you first off are really into it and have vetted out whether it's a good decision for you or not. So really go through an audit about what you consider important, from insurance to your family life to work-life balance, and the pros and cons of contracting. But if you feel like you would be a better fit for more of the entrepreneurial mindset, finding your own clients, building leads, following up with those leads, eventually converting those to sales, pricing deals, and that kind of work. And also, if you're the type of person that's really good at networking, I think that would be a really good space for you. But you'll never know until you try it. So try it and see what happens.
Nice, love that. And then Carlos, what about yourself? What's some advice that you would give someone that's looking to get into contracting?
Not much to add to that, other than I think, treat it like an experiment. We have this kind of black and white thinking about, well, what if I go into contracting, it doesn't work? And okay, that's fine. Go back to what you were doing before, and then regroup and find out maybe why it didn't work out, and if you really want to keep pursuing it. I think it helps to start with the reasons not to do it, and the main reasons not to do it, or I think the reasons a lot of people got into the data space was really just for the money, not because they enjoyed the game of data, the game of data engineering, the game of data science, and delivering insights that are actionable for a company to work on. If you don't have that bone in your body, then maybe moving into contracting space where a lot more is going to be required of you is not going to be good, and it's not treating your clients well, right? You have to not only love the game for the game itself, but you have to know something to bring to the table, right? Because there's oftentimes when people are hired, like back in the day when I was an engineer, people like myself would be hired and trained on the job to do what we were doing, right? The degree came with a bit of clout, but you had to basically learn the skills on the job, and that's really not the case for contractor, right? So if you're getting into contracting, have a few years of experience, I would say, at least under your belt. Now, I can't make a prescription because everybody's like path is different, but I think it does help to have a certain level of expertise so that you can hit the ground running for your clients. And that helps with the networking side too, because the word gets out that you've done good work. It starts to kind of compound for yourself. So I think there's many routes into contracting. You can just completely take the dive without any contracts in hand, or you can wait until you get a contract in hand and then make the move. You can go through recruiters. You can, you can kind of source those leads yourself and do the whole sales pipeline. There's just so many ways, and you can do it all at the same time too. But I think one last piece of advice, I know I'm kind of going long, don't have a perfectionist mindset when it comes to this. Like for your work, definitely have a perfectionist mindset, but when it comes to contracting, there's going to be just a lot of stuff that you can learn beforehand, but you just got to take a step into it and learn as you go, and you'll kind of figure it out as you go. If you really want to be in the space, you'll figure it out.
Yeah, and the biggest takeaway from that is it's like a leap of faith. Contracting, it can really take you in many different routes, either a long-term contract or contract after contract, and even contract to hire. I've seen a lot of candidates find their homes from a contract position to start out with, and then later on they get converted into a full-time employee and they're there for multiple years. So yeah, I know that's kind of getting off the topic of contracting, but the point is that it's definitely a route that can go in different many ways.
Mhm.
So, Charlie, if you want to kick off our next topic.
Yeah, just to add in, backing you up on that, Jose, I've definitely seen a lot of clients of mine be successful on that contract to hire basis, especially if someone's a more junior candidate. It gives both parties an opportunity to kind of try before you buy. So could also be an opportunity for you to try contracting with the possibility for full time. I loved Varun and Carlos, a lot of the points you guys had. You mentioned like building momentum, working with recruiters, work with a recruiter, make them your best friend if they're not your best friend already. I can't, vouch for how helpful it's been to have good candidates in my back pocket as a recruiter. Very much when I'm working with clients, I will mention to them like, would you hire somebody like Carlos or like Varun or like Krista and people that I've worked with in the past? And that helps, us build relationships with clients and help you get in the door. So you're not doing as much, sales on your end, make your job a little bit easier. Let us do that piece for you. So highly recommend to candidates networking with recruiters. Obviously, as mentioned before, and everyone knows, especially if you've been on LinkedIn or TikTok or Instagram, AI is a huge trend these days. And there's a lot of implications that are coming with that. Varun, I'm going to kick off this next topic with a question for you. What do you see that companies are going to need from like a talent perspective in the data and AI market to be successful in this new AI space?
Yeah, I think I'll start off with the data engineering aspect of things. So essentially, you're going to need candidates who are experienced in building data warehousing. You're going to need candidates who are experienced in building out data governance models. So data governance essentially falls under data quality. So ensuring your data is quality, so that when you train your AI models, you're not producing inaccurate results, and you're not training your AI models with inaccurate data. Data lineage is really important. So data engineers who can build out data lineage pipelines, so they know from the source when you're ingesting the data to transforming it to processing it to loading it to the data warehouse to building views, and whether you're using DBT or to actually training the AI model, where within that, how did that data start? Where did that data start? And what's the progression from start to finish? And what are all the stages or touch points that the data went through before being loaded into the data warehouse and being consumed? And data access. So essentially, whether that's IAM on your cloud provider, or even more, you can get column or level access, or row level access that a lot of these data warehouses provide, and masking and data protection services that these cloud providers provide. So ensuring that you're not overly permissive with your data. You're ensuring that other teams that don't need access to the data don't have access to the data. So if it's a HR data or marketing data or sales data, ensuring that that data is not being accessed by the wrong team, right? And not being under permissive either. There's been many contracts I've been on where it's taken weeks to get access to a data set, or I think everyone's experienced this. To get access to a data set and to be able to run a pipeline, and you needed access to do it in order to start your work. And, for whatever reason, whether that's just, risk, or whether it's another team that's responsible for getting you set up with that access, didn't know what the procedures were to get you set up. It could be many reasons, but data access is also extremely important, and all in the areas of AI and data privacy. And then when it comes to the actual AI work, people like Carlos to actually train the model, people like myself who work with generative AI to actually build the chatbots, and to train the machine learning model, and to fine tune it, to detect drift. So really, you need data engineers, you need people who are focused on data quality, you need machine learning engineers, you need data scientists, and those are really important for you to actually succeed with your AI strategy. But then again, it always depends on what exactly you're trying to do. So, yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like a lot of the, similar trends of hiring that companies have always needed, maybe just packaging it with, a different end goal. Carlos, question for you. I'm sure we have a lot of candidates listening in right now that are looking to get in the market or maybe have 1 or 2 years experience and looking to make that leap. With the changes in the market, what skills should candidates be learning to be valuable in this new market?
So it's very much the same set of skills that make people successful before Gen AI was anything in the market. But I'll try to put it with a Gen AI lens as well. The main thing I think is just domain knowledge. So maybe even more so than just like the basic skills. I'll put them on par with each other, like SQL, right? The LinkedIn algorithm loves SQL. You put hashtag SQL on any post, it's going to blow up almost certainly, unless it's just pure gibberish. SQL is still the preferred way to do data engineering, to do data science, right? There's so much that you can do with it, right? And it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So, and oftentimes the Gen AI solutions are being used just to generate SQL, right? To kind of be a force multiplier in your tool chain, to make things go faster, to take you to that 10x level. So, but I do think that domain knowledge is always a really underrated thing, because you always have to take the data and then put your own interpretation on it. And that interpretation comes through the filter of your understanding of the way that the data interacts. Like if you see two columns that have like high multi-collinearity, is it supposed to be that way? Or is that like a bug in the system essentially? Do you need to get rid of that, or do you need to transform it in some way to make it intelligible? So domain knowledge, the example that I use is causal modeling. When you're doing a causal modeling pipeline, at least if you take the Perlian approach, you always start with a conceptual model of how the data is dependent or independent of other pieces of the data. Like what features are independent of other features, and what features could possibly affect other features. And you do that in a graphical form, right? So that's your domain knowledge being encoded in a graph. And then you take the data and you use that to either validate your hypothesis. So it's very much the scientific method, right? But it always starts with your assumptions and your domain knowledge, your understanding of the system, right? So I worked on a contract where I was working with people that had an immense amount of domain knowledge, and I really had to upskill there to even be able to build a dashboard for them, right? So my primitive dashboarding skill was not enough. The domain knowledge had to come in to build something that was intelligible and useful for them. So I think starting there is always going to be the best part, and then also begin to bringing in the Gen AI piece. I don't know why I have trouble saying that. Bringing that piece in, learn how to start to integrate that into your workflows, right? So if you're a data analyst and you work in SQL primarily, maybe instead of going to Stack Overflow, which is going to be completely generated by LLMs anyway soon, instead of going there, try to incorporate ChatGPT into that. Or if you're translating, say, from one SQL dialect to another, like say on Snowflake and I want to run it on PySpark, right? There's going to be some functions that don't translate directly. Have the chatbot do that for you, and see how far that can take you in your efficiency and your ability to get the job done. Start to integrate those tools into your workflows and see if you can start to create a new system where it's not just you and your knowledge, it's you working with the computer in a much closer way to augment what you're doing. Or you can use it to build, say, like data validations, right? Or unit tests, right? To make sure that what you've done is correct, and you can start to implement that in your system. So I think a solid understanding of the fundamentals, domain knowledge is huge, and then start to integrate the flashy stuff incrementally to augment, not replace what you're doing already.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. Thanks, Carlos. I have a question now for both of you. I'm curious, being contractors in the market, what types of roles have you seen recruiters reaching out to you about? And, can you compare that with like what you think they need versus what they're asking for. Varun, do you want to start off?
Sure. Yeah, I think with this AI trend, data scientists are, is a really hot position that companies are hiring for, and it's kind of it's kind of interesting considering that it was the opposite for a few years, where initially in, I don't know, 2007 or 2008, 2009, companies were hiring for data scientists because they wanted to implement predictive analytics and AI. Then they realized, whether that's a few months or a few years afterwards, that they needed the data infrastructure to do all of that work. So then they started hiring data engineers, and that became super in demand. So, you had a huge big data craze in the 2008 area, 2009, 2010 with Cloudera, and then Snowflake, and then Databricks, and then now all the cloud providers that all have their own data warehousing and big data solutions. So to answer your question, data science is really big right now. And data engineering has diminished slightly. What I've seen is in the sense that budget for data engineering projects have gone down slightly. But I think this is a short-term trend. We're going to see that come back up in the next few months or years once, companies that are now new to implementing AI realize that they need more data pipelines, more data quality, more data management. That now they need to handle unstructured data because they're training models on unstructured data. So being able to analyze MP4 or music or audio, or that is music, but say audio files or images, for example, or text, right? You need to do some kind of cleansing and sentiment analysis on that. There's going to be new areas of exploration in the areas of data engineering in the area specifically for unstructured data that haven't come out yet. And I think that's going to be super big in the next few years as well. So data engineering isn't going anywhere for those that are, data engineers currently and are feeling that within their department or, as a contractor, wherever you fit into that grand scheme of things, you might be feeling that, but I assure you that it won't be the case for long term. And then I think data science is going to continue to be hot, and rightfully so, because AI is the future. I think you need both functions. I think you need data science and data engineering. So yeah, I think that's going to be very hot. And one thing I will say is, I think the days of big data, which were really hot, which is not just analyzing small portions or medium portions of data, but aggregating petabytes of clickstream data or petabytes of financial data and storing it in your data warehouse, but not understanding what data you actually need and how that data is going to be used. I think we're going to see a lot of companies that are medium to smaller sized companies to start moving away from that big data trend to just medium data trend, right? Let's only pull the data that we actually really need, and let's focus on the business outcomes rather than pulling everything and then figuring out what we need later. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Varun. Carlos, anything you'd add in?
I've gotten quite a few inquiries from people, but from different recruiters for different roles, but it's hard to correlate. Like, they're all orthogonal to each other. I think that a lot of the recruiters that I've interacted with, they see the word data maybe in my headline or in my profile, and they think if this is just even remotely related to data, that we'll reach out to this person because they seem like maybe they have done some things with data. It's really hard. It's really hard for me to say which is hotter now. I think that people with the necessary skill are always going to be in demand. So that's, I think, the white pill for it all is that, like, even if you find yourself in one of those fields that Varun was talking about, that's like maybe on the downtrend, but it's going to, eventually it's probably going to come back. Or if you're really good there, you're absolutely going to be in demand for that, because I think that if you can step above the crowd a little bit and show that you're willing to go the extra mile, show that you have the people skills, and show that you're teachable, you have some humility to you, that there's always going to be somebody that wants to work with you, right? There's always going to be somebody that wants to network with you. But yeah, back to it. I think, like, man, it's been all over the place. I've been reached out for ML engineer, for training LLMs, just like pretty much data science generalist roles. Even a DB admin, somebody reached out to me for that, and I was like, I don't think I'm the guy for you. Sorry. And some blockchain stuff too, but we won't talk about that here. Yeah, it's been all over the place, and honestly, I thought that data engineering was in the ascendant. So Varun saying that it's not was really interesting to me, and it seems like to be the hot thing to be like, oh, I was a data scientist, and now I realize that data engineering is superior, and so I'm going to move in that direction. And to some degree, I agree with them. At least it's superior as far as like time precedence. Like you want to do that first, and then bring in people like me to really take advantage of it. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point we are at in the market right now. Some companies are, I mean, all companies are looking at what their data strategy is going to be and how they need to reevaluate with the new tools. And I think there's no right way. Jose, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Yeah, and just to clear up any confusion, I think the needle is moving. I think the data engineering space was lacking and it wasn't too hot for the past couple months. But in the past couple of weeks, we've been seeing that move up, and a lot of clients are looking at their infrastructure, looking at their data quality. So I think we're moving in the right direction in that department to ease any concern for Varun. But Carlos, yeah, what was that?
Good to know.
All right.
I think one more point on that real quick. I think that there's always a market dynamic at play, right? Markets go up and they come down. I think that we can all kind of see that kind of sine curve play out, and that absolutely plays out in these data related spaces. But I think that, well, it's really no different than like the stock market. It's driven by hype cycles, right? So that we might, like Varun and I might have an idea of what we think is the ideal for a company, but at the end of the day, they're probably going to chase that. They're going to chase the hype to some degree, right? There's going to be the buzzwords that they want. Like if they're making a pitch to a VC, they're going to want to throw in certain keywords to make sure that they're on or they at least appear to be on the cutting edge of whatever it is. And that precedence for hype might shoehorn them into certain routes that are less than optimal for like, if you're looking at it from a long-term perspective, like what would be the best thing for continued revenue for the company? It's probably not going to be hiring me first as a data scientist, even though I do end up just wearing that data engineering hat quite a bit. It's more that we want to prioritize the engineering piece, the pipelining, the data quality, data governance, data validation, privacy protection. There's just so many facets to that, and if you can get that right, then it's nice to bring in the fancy stuff and really take it to the next level. But you don't get the fancy stuff until you've done the basic stuff, right? So
until you have a proper foundation. It does seem like it is a hype cycle, and we've seen a lot of clients approaching us for POC projects, kind of testing it out, kind of selling it to their C-level executives like Gen AI, let's do this project. And then they realize they don't actually have the right infrastructure to get the best out of AI. Carlos, to stick with you, what would you say are some positives and some negatives with Gen AI?
So, I mean, it's a very broad term, right? It can mean like generating artwork, or it can mean generating code, just any kind of model that doesn't maybe just give you a point estimate, but gives you a full useful distribution, like next word prediction or something like that. I think that it's helpful to think about it in two different paradigms, and I think that we're kind of in different epochs. So right now we're firmly in the epoch of HITL, so human in the loop, right? So all of the AI that's being used, whether it's supervised, unsupervised, LLM, whatever, always has this human component where it's the human that presses a button, controls the thing, reviews the output, and then integrates that into some other process or some other system. Even in this space, there's an incremental value to Gen AI. And then I think the second epoch is when we reach the level of AGI. Now, this is very controversial. I've talked to a lot of people who either think it's impossible or don't think it will ever happen. So when I talk about Gen AI, I'm talking about the first one, the epoch, the HITL, human in the loop, phase that we're in right now, I think there's a lot of benefit to that, whether you're just starting out your career or not. So let me give you two examples. So you're starting out as a data consultant, and you want to take the Socratic method, right? You want to take the Socratic way of learning. So you have basically the chatbot ask you questions for an interview, for a data science interview. You can say, I want to cover this topic, generate 10 questions that I can answer for you, and then grade my answers and see where they're weak and strong. You can do it something like that to really get your skills up to the next level. But I think for the experienced person, that could be helpful, but maybe you've already done that so much that, you just need to move on to something else. And I think for that, it's really incrementing it into your pipeline. So pulling the Gen AI into your pipeline and just having the stuff that you do that's kind of lower tier work, maybe like writing some boilerplate code, or again, doing the SQL translation or whatever it may be, having it do that kind of grunt work for you so that you can purposely move yourself into the space of making those higher level decisions and being in that more strategic place, right? With your job. So I think that Gen AI is right now at its base is a force multiplier for people who know how to use it, right? The big trope that's going around right now is that, we feel really bad for the junior software engineers, right? Because they're going to be replaced by Gen AI. And I don't see that really being the case yet. I think I keep saying incremental. It's happening very slowly, but it's not this like huge wave of robots that are out to get your jobs. It's not really like that, but it is taking jobs, right? It is replacing people. If you can have one engineer do the job of two, and that engineer is already in your org and you already trust them, why are you going to hire another person, right? If you can do the job of two in the time of one. And I've talked to people like this, like that can do not only multiple contracts, but multiple full-time jobs, because they're able to up their efficiency to such a level with these tools that they can still do a good job and make that happen. It sounds crazy, but it's real. It's actually happening now. So I think that there's the force multiplier part of it, but there's also the negative part of it, where if you over rely on any technology, your skills can atrophy, right? If I don't ever write SQL without it being generated by an LLM, then my innate SQL skills are just going to go away over some time, right? So there's always this idea of you need to continue to work those skills to keep them fresh in you, but you can also just rely on the chatbots to generate something, but you have to bring in your understanding of the problem to make sure that what they generated is correct. I mean, everybody using ChatGPT right now is going through this. Basically, they get some kind of mediocre output. They have to revise it or bring it up to the level where it's 100%. And that's where their domain knowledge, that's where their expertise comes in. So it's not like the chatbot's really replacing them. It really takes the human to take it across the finish line.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a very interesting topic, because it's everything from amazing technology to very scary technology and everything in between. Varun, I'm just going to ask you a very blunt question. Do you think artificial intelligence will take jobs?
I think partially it will, realistically, to Carlos's point as well. And I like to use an analogy, not an analogy, comparing it to past historical trends in this space where technology has disrupted industries. So one example that I like to use is with ATMs. So in the 1970s, ATMs, automated teller machines, started becoming very popular, and essentially it put a lot of tellers out of jobs. So you did not need to go to a teller in order to withdraw cash. You can go to an ATM to withdraw cash. Initially, there was a large reduction in jobs. There were fewer tellers across the country because banks started deploying these ATMs. However, those tellers, the ones that adapted, ended up becoming relationship bankers, and they started working with individuals to open up bank accounts and to understand their financial situation, and to open up maybe custom bank accounts with different configurations and understanding what they want. And I think this is going to be similar in the current day and age with generative AI and with any new AI technologies that come out. I think the way you adapt and the way you strategically set yourself up for success, rather than being, to have your job taken, is by becoming more strategic, at least within your industry. And specifically, for example, if you're in marketing, don't just be a marketing data engineer. So don't just be a data engineer who pulls data from marketing data sources siloed away from the rest of your company, off in your own vertical, taking on tickets. And once your data is in the data warehouse, your job is over. No, don't do that, right? Try to understand the data that you're pulling, understand which data is important, understand how your data is being used, what the business wants, and try to understand and become more of a strategy consultant or strategy contractor, if you will, in the context of our talk. Somebody that can say, hey, I don't think you should pull X, Y, and Z data. I think you should try and pull clicks or views or impressions instead of the other data points that you have. Or maybe we can leverage this data source or this third-party data source in order to connect our first-party data with it in order to build out more of a complete data graph. So I think all of that comes into play, where you identify the data sources that need to be pulled, identify techniques to do the transformations and business logic, speak to stakeholders in business to understand what they exactly want, and convert it back into technical decisions. So that kind of director of strategy and analytics, or the strategic component of the data engineering, is going to be so much more important. And I think from a data engineering perspective, that's really important, because data scientists tend to be more of the ones that understand the business, because they actually are the end users of the data. So they're the ones writing, the machine learning models to predict whatever they're trying to, like, predict revenue or predict expenses or predict clicks, views, impressions, right? Return on ad spend, that kind of thing. So I think now data engineers are going to become more, that industry is going to transform, where now we also need to be the ones that understand the data. So I think that's how it's gonna all play out. But it will take jobs. If you're just writing Python code and just ingesting data, I think there was already a large disruption in the space of data connectors. Right? Data connectors are already taking your job. If you're just connecting to S3 buckets and pulling data, jobs that are easier to do, try to adapt, try to learn new skills, try to figure out how your company can use your skill sets to do more complex work. And I think that'll make you more valuable. And AI won't take your job if you're not writing the same code every single day. So, yeah.
Nice. I think the biggest takeaway from that is becoming irreplaceable and upskilling in certain departments where you're not as strong in. Might be a good idea to start doing that now before the wave of AI really comes to fruition. Just to throw a random question at both of you, Varun, what is the most shocking thing you've seen in a professional data space?
Oh, I've seen a lot, and I know Carlos is smiling for the same reason, right? Some stuff that I can't talk about, because obviously I don't want to
keep it confidential.
Everybody in the call sign an NDA.
Yeah. But I will say I've seen some pretty overly permissive data warehousing setups where, companies are storing financial or, any kind of data without encrypting the data. So essentially storing that data that's very customer sensitive, and anyone has access to read it, and it's not encrypted at all. I'm still to this day don't understand how they passed their audits, but they did. And I think that says a lot. So pretty big company too.
Crazy stuff. Carlos, what about yourself?
For me, I saw a lookalike model. I believe it was a logistic regression model for classification that was deployed in SQL. So the whole model was written out in SQL with all the model weights and the logit, and just everything was there, but in SQL. And they were using that as like a deployment pipeline for lookalike modeling, and it just really blew my mind. Like I'd never seen anything like that. Like that's something that you build. Maybe like if the recruiter asks you to do that in an interview, just to show that you know SQL, but also lookalike modeling, but just to combine those in a production environment and to have it, the model weights were typed out like to like the 10th decimal place. Like modelers who are watching this know exactly what I'm talking about. Like this is just super weird. Like you've never seen anything like this. Typically the models are deployed, whether it be in Python or PySpark, in some sort of, it was just weird. I don't know what else to say. I've never seen anything like it.
Sounds like an interesting situation. We'll leave it there for the topics. So appreciate everyone listening in. We're going to go on to questions from the audience. So Charlie, if you can just ask them away.
Yeah, we've got a lot of participation, so thank you all. We're going to start off with a question from Jiva. Jiva asked, this is what she wrote. I have a question regarding employment trends. Why are most companies currently offering positions on a W-2 basis instead of other employment arrangements? Are there specific advantages or trends driving this preference?
Yeah, I can take that question on. So essentially, W-2, as we had mentioned, there's lots of benefits for the contract, or there's benefits for, I guess, let's start off with this. So the difference between W-2 and 1099, right? So W-2, you get insurance, so medical, dental, vision, 401k. You might also get a Roth IRA, depending on your company setup, or you might get stock benefits. In 1099, you get none of that, but you get a higher rate with the option to work multiple contracts, grow your skills, build your network, and I think everyone understands that. Now, in terms of why companies are trying to hire from a W-2 basis, it's because I think the benefit of W-2 when companies do decide to choose it is that they get to retain the knowledge and retain the expertise with the employees that they're hiring. So rather than hiring contractors to build out, a whole AI model, a generative AI bot to train it, using LangChain and whatnot, and after deploying all of these models and to build out all of this work, and then to leave, and then to transfer that information and knowledge transfer that information over to an employee, I think that can be kind of concerning. Also, companies being a contractor tends to be a little bit more pricey because you have to actually pay them higher rates. However, if you stack on I think Jose may be able to answer this a little better, but if you stack on the insurance, or you stack on the 401k and IRA and all the other benefits that come with being a full-time employee, it might actually turn out to be cheaper to go down the contractor route. So I think the biggest benefit for companies is that they get to retain the knowledge, and contractors tend to just come and go. So.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Varun. This is a question we got from Philip. Philip asks, as someone starting my data journey, do you think networking is even more important if I want to be a contractor rather than a permanent employee?
Yeah, I could take that one as well. I think, Philip, you're onto something for sure. Thank you for your question. The networking is just one of those skill sets that no matter if you work as a W-2, as you work as a 1099, or if you're just something else, it's always absolutely important. What I've heard it said is your network is your net worth, right? So this is where the people skill piece of the equation really comes in, is that you need to be a person that people want to work with. You need to be a person that people like to work with, right? And if you don't have people skills, if you're not able to realize, to think about it in terms of what other people want and not just in terms of what you want, that's really going to take you a long way. That's like the main skill of networking, I think, is being able to make those connections where you bring value to the table for them, and then whatever value they can bring back to you, that's great. But you lead with what you're giving them, right? And that, like, most people are very interested in that. There's been a lot of people that have reached out to me on LinkedIn about, like, how do I get into contracting? How do I do this? How do I do that? Can you review my portfolio? How do I break into the space? And oftentimes the way that they ask those questions is, I would say, suboptimal, because it's like, what can you do for me, a stranger? And I only have so many hours in the day, right? And I have a family, and I have all these other things that I'm doing. And Joe Blow on LinkedIn reached out. I have no clue who you are, and you're saying, like, give me all of your expertise that you've built over years of blood, sweat, toil, and tears, and give it to me for free and do it now. It's like, I don't know, like, should I do that? I don't know. That's I think if you led with something like, hey, I read an article that you wrote online and I wanted to get your thoughts on it, or I saw that you did a live stream with Harnham the other day and I really like when you said this. It's like, that's the kind of the hook where it's like, it starts a conversation that's interesting to both parties. And that's networking. That doesn't even have to be in person, though. I think in person there's the ability to have the kind of just physical feedback where you can see the other person's mannerisms a lot more. I'm using my hands a lot, but you can barely see them. They're like half off the screen. But networking is absolutely important for every job, but even more so for contracting. It's going to be your lifeblood. It's going to bring you those opportunities. It's going to grow your ability to continue to serve your clients. It's going to grow your client base. It's absolutely something you need to focus on quite a bit.
Yeah, I agree. And Carlos, you made some great points. You'd be a good recruiter. Selling yourself, like, always be insightful. Bring insights to the table. Show that you studied them. Show that you know things. Be informative, curious, etc. So if you ever want a career in recruitment, I'd love to have you on board.
You're recruiting me on this call? Let me get back to you on that one.
Yeah, but I mean, genuinely, like, Jose and I, when we're looking at candidates, people that can, show that they're curious and insightful and ask good questions, essentially shows that they're going to be able to sell themselves in an interview. And, maybe if you're not naturally coming to the table with those skills, ask recruiters, ask interviewers for feedback if you're not getting the role. That's really important. And how can you implement that to improve your candidacy in the future? We got another question from Philip, and this has been a good trend that I've seen, especially recruiting in the marketing analytics space. Philip is wondering, with third parties cookies phasing out, eventually we'll see when that specifically happens, how are companies adapting their marketing measurement strategies using MMM and MTA?
Yeah, so I've worked on a few projects in this space, and they're quite interesting. So people that don't know MMM, it's mixed media modeling, and it's a way of better performing attribution. So attribution is a concept in marketing to better understand which one of their channels is the most successful and how that eventually leads to companies putting more revenue into a given channel. So for example, let's say you're a B2B SaaS company that has a 6 month to 1 year sales cycle, and you have channels such as webinars, you have like LinkedIn live events, you have in-person events. You also have your account executives reaching out to people over email, and people are responding back and forth. You want to be able to track which one of those channels resulted in the customer acquisition, right? Which one of those channels was the most successful in terms of, where do we put our money next, right? And where do we remove our money from? So yeah, with third-party cookies phasing out, there's a few things that I've seen. One is a lot of companies are building better data platforms that contain all of their campaign information. So advertising data sources, marketing data sources, third-party data, and data from their customer data platform, data from the CRMs, and being able to do analytics on it, because you don't have all the information that you used to have from your customers with third-party cookies. So you're going to have to do more analytics in order to segment your audiences in a different way. You're going to do more analytics, maybe more predictive analytics, with being able to predict, trends that your customers are going to perform. And so that all ties back into data science and data engineering. And yeah, I think that's a big part of what I've seen at this point, 4 companies all deploying similar techniques. And then there's also several other companies that are in the space that are more on the tracking measurement side of things, if you will. And they're building tool sets where, like, for example, even in iOS or Android, I know iOS is getting rid of mobile identifiers, and Android has Google Privacy Sandbox that's coming out. iOS has already gotten rid of mobile identifiers. So there's a lot of measurement tools like App Flyers and Kachava that are being used to be able to track engagement on on mobile platforms. So that all goes back into your data strategy, the tooling that you use to be able to track and perform measurements, your analytics, your AI, all that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I'd say adding to that, specifically what I've seen from a recruitment perspective is companies moving away from multi-touch attribution and more towards like media mix modeling. We got another interesting question. KB asked, should companies be looking at hiring a chief AI officer now, or is it too early for that? I think Joe Biden has an answer for that. You guys been following the news. Anyone want to answer that question?
I think we can probably both tag it. My answer is no.
All right. Any reason why?
I'm just gonna leave it there. No. We're gonna take it away.
Oh, okay. I was expecting some, you explain it, but I agree. I think no, because it's like similar to the chief data officer role. And I was looking at some trends with chief data officer roles. Like companies overhired for chief data officers, thinking that they're going to produce these data assets that are going to be used by the business. And it later turned out that these data assets were not used by the business. And I think a large part of it is because it's very experimental, right, in nature. So you don't exactly know how a chief AI officer is going to fit into your company. You just hire one, and you're not hoping for the best, but you have to design a strategy, and that individual has to come up with a plan. And it's not similar to functions like CEO and CIO and CTO, CFO that already have predefined roles. Will a chief AI officer only handle generative AI work? I mean, it doesn't sound too promising to me, right? Where exactly do they fit into the company? I think it will become a thing for bigger companies that are really doing AI, like larger companies that are actually doing more sophisticated AI algorithms. I think Carlos can talk more about that, where you need to actually think about privacy and how to leverage different foundational models, like what strategies you're going to take with tying in different foundational models together to produce a certain output. I think that'll come into play, but for most companies, I think it's not going to be very useful.
Yeah, and let me add a little bit more color to my answer of no. I think that a chief AI officer is going to be somebody that's almost certainly going to be beholden to the stakeholders, right? And they have to make projections. They have to make these kind of predictions on what value they're going to bring to the company. The space is changing so rapidly. Like this is the thing I say over and over again on LinkedIn is that we are in the age of the exponential, firmly in the age of the exponential, and it's almost impossible to predict where the technology is going to take us next. I mean, we've already seen just amazing changes in the last year, if that 6 months. That time horizon is shortening too for these like exponential, these huge leaps. So for a chief AI officer, so much of what they're going to be graded on for their performance is, I think, out of their control to some degree. And I just haven't ever seen anything that really would constitute discrete guidelines that those types of people could use to measure performance, to make sure that what they're doing for the company is leading it in the right direction. Now, if the company is like a smaller company, so there's a question of scale too. I think it makes more sense maybe for a company that has defined analytics pipelines to have somebody like a chief AI officer. But again, that could mean so many different things that it's hard to say if that person's really going to bring value to the company. But I think for maybe like something like a startup where you're trying to procure, venture capital funding, you're in like the early seed rounds, and the people that you're talking to are very much in of the vein and of the idea that you need somebody like a chief AI officer or somebody that correlates with that. I think that if that's the difference between you procuring funding and not, yeah, absolutely, you should have somebody that's called a chief AI officer. Maybe that person's just a data scientist or a data engineer, but that's the thing too. Like the success of the AI function is always dependent on what happens upstream from the modeling, always dependent on that. And so that person either has to have that kind of experience as well to know, is the company able to even bring these results to the table or not? And that's a huge skill set. That takes years of work. And again, this space is so nascent and it's changing so fast that again, I think the answer is maybe not no, but I think it depends really. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I appreciate that. Good insights from you both. Obviously, I think, a lot of people are leveraging the AI buzzword these days. I'm seeing companies that are just doing normal predictive modeling or, NLP that's been around and using the buzzwords AI to get some funding and interest. But obviously, with AI comes a lot of concerns around, privacy and harm to the public and, iRobot disasters. So, especially from like the government level, they have to be careful. And, we've seen recent policies around that. So it's an exciting and changing time for everyone. We have one more question and then we'll wrap things up. Abhijit asks, lawyers are expensive. What are some ways to protect yourself against risk and liabilities as a contractor? Great question.
Yeah, I'll take that question on. And if I know who Abhijit is, then, thanks for asking the question, Abhijit. He's in mind. So yeah, I think the way, you protect yourself against risks and liabilities as a contractor is, number one, scope out your projects properly. If it's fixed price, have the definition of done, what exactly does it mean to be finished. So you produce 5 dashboards, 10 dashboards, 3 models.
Absolutely.
You build out X, Y, and Z data warehouse. So really have it in the contract that you know exactly you're defining what it means to be done with the task. So there isn't scope creep, right? Clients are constantly coming in and saying, hey, let's add 5 more tasks or 10 more tasks to this project. And now, you're on a limited budget and you take a loss on the project, especially for fixed price projects. So I think that's the first thing. Second thing is get insurance, professional liability, general liability, disability, workers' compensation. Those are usually the insurance that's required for you to do any work in the industry. Some companies require more, some companies require less. Non-disclosure agreements are usually signed if you're working with the company. They usually send it to you if they don't want you to expose any information. So sign that contract. That's also really great. Yeah, I think a lot of what it is even work for hire. So work for hire is whether the work that you produce, is it available? Is it your work or is it the client's work? Right? As a contractor, is it the work that you built out? Is that your work or the client's work? And I think that comes into play, defining that very, very clearly, so you're not reusing it for other clients. And another way to protect yourself I've seen is, if you're going to demo a project that you've done for one client, inform them, get approval so that you can actually show other clients that you've done the work, and you're not using their any of their private information to sell other services. So yeah.
Awesome. That's really informative. And yeah, lawyers are expensive, so definitely mitigate the risk and figure out what you're getting yourself into. But gentlemen, this was great. That's all we have for you folks today. It was really good to talk about the contract market and the hot trends of artificial intelligence. If you found this insightful, please visit our website at harnham.com and take part of our salary guide that is about to come out in a couple months. There's going to be a link in the chat, so if you want to partake, go for it. But thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Varun, Carlos, and thank you for everyone tuning in. Have a good rest of your day, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.